Sandeep had addressed, mainly why are we focusing on the automobile sector? Clearly, automobile is a very powerful sector. 7% of Indian GDP comes from this sector, 35% of manufacturing GDP, and they have complete power over their supply chain because they provide pretty much all the technology, and they are kind of tied to these OEMs for their business in toto. And they have a lot of influence on the government policy and implementation of those policies. And therefore, if we want to bring in a change to this manufacturing sector, it has to come from these automobile brands. And our own experience has been that 80% of the injured that we find who come to us for their needs come from the automobile sector. So clearly, if we clean up this sector, the rest should kind of fall in place. The second main issue is that it's a multi-brand pan-India problem. So these are, of course, just the Haryana and Maharashtra numbers that I've shown. And this is in just 1 year. And just look at the numbers, how it's spread throughout all these 10 brands. We don't have offices in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat, Uttarakhand yet. But we do small surveys. We go and talk to them about their experiences and stuff. And we find that the same problem exists in all these places. That is why we are calling it a multi-brand pan-India problem. And therefore, the objective of this series of reports remains to hold the top 10 automobile brands responsible for the thousands of accidents in the supply chain. And as I mentioned earlier, and Sandeep has also been saying, if they don't take action, our expectation of any change is practically nil. They have to make the change. And in this top-down approach that we take in the SafetyNiti, we assess their OSH policy to see how they address the issue of OSH, especially in their supply chain. And this is something that now even the government has started to look at in their disclosures through BRSR, which also we will be addressing in a little while. But the point in all this is, are they just reporting, or are they taking cognizance of what's happening within their organizations and making the requisite changes? And I think a report like this, which compares over the years, you can then see whether or not they're making these changes and map exactly who's progressing at what level. The top 10 automobile brands that we've chosen are based on the net sales over the years. And these are the 10 that the last 4 years, it's remained the same. So next I take you through the methodology, which is, as we mentioned earlier also, it is publicly available policy documents. We don't get any inside information which, they can question that we don't know your source and therefore what is it. This is what they have publicly put out saying these are our policies. We have a set of 21 key questions. We look for the answers to those questions in these policies. We share our findings with each of these companies, and we try and hold meetings with them. And this year, I think 6 of them responded to us and had a meeting with us, gave us their inputs. Some of them are quite keen to, get their ratings changed, which is quite interesting when they say, you left out this part of what we do. And one organization whom we had rated low on training actually held 2 trainings between our meetings and said, now will you change what we did? And we said, okay, hold it over the year, and next year we'll change it. So they even invited us to their training. So that's actually very optimistic for us, because we want them to make these kind of changes. And therefore, that's the last one. We relook or we don't relook the findings, and we tell them where they exactly stand and what we would like them to do to get that green, that, out of their RAG status.
Saroja mentioned we looked at all the policies, we did all of that, but this is what we have got, and we have a set of 21 questions, 10 here, 11 the next slide. So what can be called as the big picture is what we are trying, and this is not 4-year data which is available online, but this is basically this year's data, and if you can look at it, this is policies. Policies, there has been an improvement. This looked much different 4 years back. So slow, but some kind of changes happening. This is like broadly the outline of that. Compare that to actual implementation, it's still pretty much red. So they have started on the first step, which is a mapping, but otherwise not much has been done. That's a broad summary of what we have found in terms of policies and implementation. So I'll mention a few of the highlights. It's just a sample, it's just examples, there are more in the report. So like I said, there's some improvements in terms of policies. So one of the things that we have been pushing has been on non-permanent workers being treated on par within their system. The OSH policy is the policy for their own factories. So even that was not on par. So that they've changed. Even the newer policies are even better. Hero released one this year, much better policy on that. And the supplier code of conduct, which is the OSH policy for their suppliers, what they expect from the suppliers, tier 1 now, and we are suggesting it should go to the deeper supply chain, but for tier 1 mostly now. But that was something that most didn't have. Now it's come up to 8 plus 1. TVS, during our conversation, they said they have a policy ready. It's not out there yet. So only Ashok Leyland. Maruti Suzuki doesn't have a SEOC. Ashok Leyland did one last year, and it's one of the better ones. So that's what I'm saying. The new policies are comparatively better, what is coming out. And they do have suggestions that we have suggested, but yeah, causality, I'm not sure. Then even in implementation, there's some changes, but all limited to first tiers, nothing to the deeper supply chain. So there's some monitoring happening. So we put a number 40%, and it's based on their reports that we can see. So some have defined corrective actions as part of their supplier code of conduct. So some changes, yes, but yeah. So the policy areas, the very top of the policy, which is something that we've been suggesting, it has to be part of their standard board agenda. None have it, even though some subcommittees here and there, 2 or 3, but largely nothing. There's no implementation policy. The grievance redressal system doesn't go down to the supply chain. It's just for their own factories. So again, something that's not happening. In terms of actual implementation for the deeper supply chain, and not even for the tier 1s, very little has happening. So for example, trainings, audits, nothing, really nothing that they're doing. Tier 2, couple of pilots of training, that's all we have in the whole industry right now. And even stuff like accident and injury reporting, which in the new BRSR core is compulsory, that is also like it's a legal requirement, even then it's not being done yet. So yeah, really slow in terms of implementation. So there's broadly some points in terms of some stuff that is on the report. So there are much more, but this is just indicative. That's why we presented. So what we've done this time is we have looked at a few more angles to it. One of them is something that we've been suggesting Siam for a long time, which is about having a model supplier code of conduct. Even though, like I said, we have 9 of the top 10 OEMs, top 10 automobile brands having supplier code of conducts, they're not great. So we looked at international standards, we looked at what's legally required, NGRBC, we looked at ILO, and then created what can be called a minimum requirements checklist only for OSH, because that's where our expertise lies. And we found that even with that kind of a list, we don't have even 60%, not even single one has 60% of them. The 20 items, nobody has 12, basically. Some have half of it, that's where we are. So that's broadly what we have. Hopefully this is something that gets picked up much more. So that's the hope that we have. Interesting topic that is kind of popular right now is BRSR, because it become compulsory from 2020 to 23. So we did some analysis of that, not in depth, because we are focused on our top 10 automobile brands. So 8 of them are listed, so we looked at their policies. And yeah, this is how it is. So anything related to the supply chain, which is optional, skip. Not everyone, some of them have reported, but anything related to supply chain where they can actually put out a vague answer, even if it's a compulsory question. For example, how many can answer a "we do a good work" kind of language. So that is the kind of stuff that we have found in the first "we do a lot" wala language. So you know what it is. So you can't. So that's what we have in terms of the BRS. So we limited to 8, but if the top 8 are like this, we'll. And the other areas that are in the report, for example, we are getting into looking at what investors and audit agencies, the PwCs and KPMGs of the world, what are they looking at or what are they doing in terms of OSH in the automobile sector supply chain. So we have that in the report, so please refer to the report. The online version has everything. And so we'll end with where we always end. We have a list of recommendations, which is also reflected in the 21 questions, 21 indicators that we have. But these are the top five in terms of, which can be done fast, which should be done immediately. That's what. This is the immediate list that we have. These are the top 5 recommendations in terms of policy. In the report, we have also RAG status. This is one big red flag. This is in terms of operation recommendations that we have top 5. Slightly better because people have been, it's easier to do, which is why I think you have some improvements in terms of, say, second one, we have supplier code of conduct for a few, this one. And we are just, the problem is our expectations are low in this because kuch to karo types, that is where we are. That's why you have some green here, some amber here. But yeah, hopefully we are in a position to increase the strength of these requirements pretty soon. So that's the hope on which I'm just stopping. Thank you.
How do you interact with these brands? Like, do you have contacts there? Who do you meet? How do you share these recommendations with them?
Over time, SI has now been in existence for 8 years. So over time, we have made contact with all of them, and we basically interact with either the safety head, the procurement supply chain person, or in certain cases, the CSR person. And we typically send them whatever assessment we made only for their own organization, not a comparative one. And then we ask them to go through it and see if they feel that we've not kind of been fair on our rating. And we hold either online or offline meetings with them where we go through each of these questions.
Yeah, but that's how you're collecting the data.
The data we download by ourselves from their website or anywhere else that they put in annual reports. We have their SCOCs, human rights policy. Then, they have about 7, 8 which is already available. The SEBI website has the BRSR. So we sit and download all of that by ourselves and then analyze it.
So what I mean is, let's say Maruti. Now, if you've gone to them with recommendations, what's the process then to get them to implement it?
We try and meet them every quarter, and then they try and tell us that they're doing stuff. So it's just that, our expectation and their speed vary quite a bit.
Neha. Couple of things. Since Saroja joined us about a year back, and so did Dhanraj a year back. What we have been doing for 5-6 years now. Our first report was published in 2019, Crush 2019, with the data of 1,000 plus automobile sector supply chain workers injured. Those days we were only in Haryana, so Maruti, Honda, Hero. So the process we have put in place for the past 5-6 years is as follows. We have 2 reports a year, Crushed and SafetyNiti, as they were saying, bottom up, top down. These 2 reports go to board of directors, chairman, and whoever contact we establish, either because they have offered us that contact or we have found a contact. This is the formal process. Then obviously there's an informal process. Through our contacts wherever we can, we try influencing the senior people in there. Some of them are directors in some of the brands, some of the CEOs. So you asked about Maruti. Maruti actually, credit to them, They were the first ones where Mr. R.C. Bhargava himself wrote a letter back to us in response to our report and said, these are the 3 things we will do, these are 3 things you need to do. Fantastic. So that has laid the ground for our work with Maruti. Like any organization, people come and go and it waxes and wanes. And I keep saying that at best we get grudging respect from them. We are on different sides of the table. They don't, some of them don't like, as an organization, people are great, right? What we are saying. So a formal process goes on. As Saroja said, we do video conferences, meeting, calls, telephone calls. On an average, I would say most brands talk to us twice a year, right? Some more, some less. In some cases, we have structured quarterly calls where we share some anonymized data of accidents, which then they try taking actions on. So again, you know, our data has been presented at their supplier conferences in case of Honda and Maruti. Others have done, but they don't tell us all the time what they are doing, right? Bajaj last year, when they started engaging with us, they were very intense about the whole conversation. We had lots of meetings. We went and met them. And they started taking actions in the local supply chain in Maharashtra. This year, Mahindra has got engaged, and that has come from their CEO down through, actually, one of our friends couldn't join us, but she knows the CEO, and I know the CEO, and we have found a way to get through there. And now they are taking those actions. I don't think we can structure it much more than that, but we try our best. So actually, you have prompted me to make a request here, online, whoever is listening, if you have any contacts in the brands, personal contacts especially. People like us, we can always find a way, right? The point is, if somebody has personal contacts and they believe in this cause, please pick up the phone and talk to them. Please tell them the problem. Please tell them to come and visit us. We have been telling them for 5 years to come and see these workers and meet these workers, and they'll figure out themselves. They are not doing that, right? So that's where we are. I hope I've added some meat to your.
Have you had a chance to look at the brand's safety policy and their standards and statistics in their factories? Is there a big contrast in the safety standards and the statistics, the number of accidents and social protection that workers?
The report does look at it. So the OSH policies that they have for their brands, that's what they have for their brands, for their factories. And the supplier code of conduct, which is basically what their rules are for the
Next layer.
Yeah, for the first layer, which we are suggesting should be even deeper. But there is a difference in the quality of what is expected. Even if we just look at OSH, for their own factories, it's good. Sometimes it's on par with their international operations. Supplier codes, they don't have most of it. Just follow the law is one of the suggestions, like law follow karo. That's all we need for kind of.
Any ballpark sense on what's the differential? Like, is it like 0 accidents in their factories and like, orders
so
of magnitude difference?
Out of the 8,000 cases that we have, it's single digit that we have from the brand factories. So, yeah.
I'd just like to add here that we talk about a standard operating procedure being set for all the supply chain personnel also for each equipment or each machinery that's used. That almost none of them have, and that's something that we've been insisting that you should have this and you should audit them on usage of these procedures. And they're pretty much all of them are red.
And just to add to that, Tarun, by the way, people who don't know Tarun founded and runs an organization called Intersection, a fantastic organization. But I think the data that we have, Dhanraj mentioned, so if we have met 10,000 workers injured and disabled, single digit from brands, 25% from the tier 1 suppliers, 75% from the deeper suppliers. The tier 1 suppliers, difficult for us to know how many, but ACMA has 800 members. Below that, we believe there are 25,000 factories. Again, there is no firm data, but that's the kind of number. On an average, we have tracked the bell curve of factory accidents that we see. And we know the worst factory that we know has 50 accidents every year, a direct supplier to a brand in Faridabad, right? They're also with one. I mean, one, you can forgive a year, right? Obviously not good enough, but still you can understand it. But plenty of factories with one a month. In the brands, there is another issue. Brands do take care of their own workers, as they should, as they must, and they will obviously do, because they have a brand to protect, right? So those workers don't come to us either, they are taken care of, right? In fact, the Rewari accident, where 60 workers got burnt and 19 died finally, right? Just pre-elections that happened, it happened in March. Those guys got 30 lakhs per head, right? Some from the company, some from ESIC, some from Chief Minister's Fund. So if that can happen in tier 1, obviously brands take care of people themselves, of those people themselves. Does that? Yeah. But it's a very difficult question, because we really would like to benchmark and understand how working conditions are impacting accidents. It's a question that we find very difficult to be very precise about.
Have you tried to calculate the economic burden on industry if they implement all the recommendations that you are making?
No. Business case for safety, Jagdish ji. Forget us. I have spoken to, as far as we could, spoken to the experts in the country. We do not have a business case for safety in the country. And part of the reason, and I'm no expert at this, is human life is, what is the cost of human life in India? In the UK, if somebody lost their fingers, probably it's, it's going to cost £250,000. Here, they ask them to leave the job. So, I go to, every year I do a course in Ahmedabad, and I do a 2 or 3 hour workshop, and all the 500 students are there, and I ask them a classic question that, okay, how much can I pay you for one finger of yours? Because same question comes up. What's the business case? Can they really afford to invest to save these people, right? What's the cost of a finger? And I'm saying, okay, I'll give you 1 crore, right? I need your 2 fingers. Of course, nobody's going to, right? But what's the cost of life in India? And that's where I think the fundamental issue is. But there is a flip side. These sensors, Gajendra ji couldn't answer, but these sensors are 5, 10, 15,000 rupees, right? The springs that break are 500 rupees. The keys that break, there are 2 main reasons for old power presses to this double press that happens, right? So it happens for 2 main reasons. Spring टूट जाता है, मेरे को अगर गलती कर रहा हूँ तो बता देना जहाँ साथी हमारे. Spring टूट जाता है, spring is 500 rupees. Key टूट जाती है, that's anywhere from 500 rupees to 2,500 rupees. That's all. But as I think Deepika ji was saying, वो check ही नहीं करते. So business case for safety, in our mind, the theory of change is very clear. वो जो bell curve है, उसमें 1/3 is low hanging fruit. 1/3 एक्सीडेंट तो आराम से बच सकते हैं. वो लास्ट 1/3 बहुत महंगे होने वाले हैं. वो लास्ट 1/3 हमारी जिंदगी में होंगे नहीं होंगे मुझे नहीं पता, right? But first 1/3 is very easy. It's not difficult. It's just about attention. It's about honest audits. It's about pressure. It's about saying unacceptable. इतना मुश्किल नहीं है 1/3. और अगर साल में 10,000 वर्कर्स के हाथ कट रहे हैं, which we believe is happening. हमारी छोटी सी 8 लोगों की टीम, we find, now 2,500 workers a year this year will find, right? तो 10,000 होंगे कम से कम. एक साल में 10,000 लोगों के हाथ कट रहे हैं ऑटो सेक्टर में. तो 3-4 हज़ार को तो बचाओ. क्या बिजनेस केस चाहिए? कुछ नहीं है उसमें बिजनेस केस. सॉरी, गौरव आप पूछने वाले थे.
Just supplementing to your answer, which was given in response to Tarun's answer. So there is actually a case going on in Haryana Human Rights Commission. I won't take the name of the companies if...
नहीं बोल दो. It's a public information. It's public information. Yeah, absolutely.
So Maruti, Hero and Honda. So whenever the question is asked from either the Haryana Human Rights Commission or in response to the case that is made out by us, they always come up with statistics that in their factories only 1 person has died in the past 10 years. So actually there is statistics where they show that only this many number of accidents or some people losing their hands has happened. When the question which is posed to them is very categorical, that tell us the number which has happened in your supply chain, and they always, as if they don't know how to read, they always give the numbers that happen in their factories only and exclusively. So there you can so if you put this report vis-a-vis their affidavits or their replies, you can very well make the case what is the sea change between the 2 numbers. Thank you.
We should stop because we're running half an hour late and some of our guests have to leave. But thank you. And there is another Q&A coming in with that panel. So thank you so much, Saroja and Dhanraj. Thank you. the context of Gaurav, who represented us and represents us at Haryana Human Rights Committee, is this, that they did a suo motu against Maruti Hero Honda. We had nothing to do with it based on our report. And then we were forced to reply to these responses that came from them. Otherwise, we were not engaged and involved in that inquiry at all until 2022. Thank you. Okay.
And unfortunately, the commission is not functioning.
And the commission is not functioning right now. But good news is that the National Human Rights Commission last week has passed a judgment which says that the businesses in the country have to, what was it? Map their supply chain, which is one of our recommendations, obvious one. So there is a beginning, and I think credit to them that they have done that. So let's see if it gets implemented, but good news.